Tonight, the Dallas Stars will play in their most important game of the regular season against the Vegas Golden Knights. A regulation win secures them a spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And on today's show, I'll be joined by the guys over at Locked On Vegas Golden Knights to talk about all the big storylines going into this game and what it will take for both teams to come out on top. All coming up on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
Your Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Dallas Stars media, coming to you on this Tuesday, April 26th. Guys, thank you for hanging with me, for being understanding of no episode yesterday. Just recovering from some allergies that hit me over the weekend, just taking a little bit of time off, but you know, the rest is over and we have a busy week ahead of us here as far as Dallas Stars hockey is concerned, and it all starts tonight in a massive game. The Vegas Golden Knights coming into town for the third matchup between these two teams of the season, but a regulation win for the Stars would guarantee them a spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is very exciting. And in just a moment, we'll be joined by the guys over at Locked On Vegas Golden Knights to talk about this matchup. But before we do that, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new here on YouTube. Hit the follow button on your favorite podcasting platform. We are free and available no matter where you listen or how you listen. You can leave a comment, rating, or review if you like what you hear. It all supports the show, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you guys for stopping by. But without any further hesitation, let's get into today's episode with Locked On VGK. Well, welcome in, hockey fans. This is Dane Lewis, host of the Locked On Stars podcast, joined now by the host of the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast, Tony Cordasco and Chris Gawlik. Guys, how we doing today?
Super. Never a dull, never ever, right, Chris? Never a dull day.
Not good.
In
Not
VGK
good. Call it
land.
what it is. I'm devastated.
The duality of the
what?
answers.
I don't know.
About a loss. What about Robin Leonard? You know,
I was thinking. I was thinking about the anniversary of not a major. Something else happened yesterday.
Historic day. I mean, the Sharks might have knocked VGK out of the playoffs. It's very historic around here. And now we have Robin Leonard. We can just get into it, about Robin Leonard. And then finally we find out officially that he will undergo surgery. This is not for a knee injury. That's coming probably later, right? So he has the shoulder injury, and Frank Saravelli said back in February, torn labrum. That's right there in that shoulder area. That is, and we know that Robin Leonard had denied that up and down. And right now, Leonard is out of the picture. He's done for the season. This is Logan Thompson's team. It's just been so crazy. There's just been, to be honest with you, so many lies here. I mean, we had Emily Kaplan first come out. She reported, that Robin Leonard season would be done last Friday due to surgery. First, they said the knee, and a comedy of errors ensues. Everything is just kind of spilled over for Robin Leonard. It's both emotional and physical. He just got tired of being criticized, I think, by Pete DeBoer. And then, or even said, he said that after the Washington game, when they started him, they started Leonard and then they yanked him. Pete DeBoer even said, here was a guy that was healthy and fresh. So the lack of lies, we don't know what to believe, but finally, once and for all, and let's not forget, on Sunday, Pete DeBoer and V's kind of mum, but they said afterwards, as we found out on Monday, that it was salary cap implication. That's why they dressed Robin Leonard on Sunday. It's so confusing right now. And this is just an organization that just keeps lying. And I could tell why so many teams, so many fan bases not like the Golden Knights. You can just see right through it. This is it's a big joke. I think it's a clown show around the National Hockey League.
Yeah, you mentioned all that, and you throw in. I mean, you have the whole like Dodonov debacle at the trade deadline. How much do you guys think that all these just insane storylines have affected this season? I feel like, and even like you go back to November. I mean, the Jack Eichel news. I mean, he didn't play immediately, but how much do you think just Vegas being in the media spotlight so much this season has maybe affected the turnout on the ice? Do you think that's had any impact or not really at all?
I'll fire off for a little bit. Since day one, VGK has been in the spotlights. So I don't think the attention is anything new per se, but this is a new level of attention, starting with Marc-Andre Fleury in the offseason, and then Jack Eichel, and then all the injuries, and then all of the salary cap roulette. Although me and Tony have mentioned on our show so many times, our leadership says we have no salary cap issues or anything like that, which obviously we don't necessarily agree with that statement. Everything with Robin Lehner over the last week, that has taken a toll. That's taken a great toll. And I don't understand all of the salary cap things and how all of that works necessarily. I know we have a number. We have to stay below it. If someone's on LTIR, it doesn't count. And you kind of go from there. I don't know how this weekend matters to Robin Lehner. Oh, well, you just play the weekend out and then we'll put you on IR. Then you can do your thing on Monday. I don't understand how that works. That's not a good look for the organization. His health is what matters. And if he's not healthy enough to play, if he doesn't feel he's healthy enough to play, but the team wants to put you out there, it's been a strange 3 weeks. It's been a strange 4 days. It's been a strange 5 years in Southern Nevada. So why not, right? Why not?
Yeah, just absolutely chaotic. And I know, like you said, I mean, the whole league just watching all of this unfold and, certainly drawing a lot of criticism. And then even just last night, I mean, NHL Twitter is always a mess, but the results of last night's game definitely putting that on steroids. But kind of, flipping the script to maybe a little bit more positivity and what you guys think that this team can be capable of to overcome these odds. Who has kind of been, the guy for this team that, on the ice, the leader with all the injuries? I mean, you look at statistically, I mean, you have Marchessault up there, Stevenson, Theodore kind of leading the way with points. But for either of you guys, or, you're both welcome to answer, who in your eyes has just been maybe a glue guy trying to hold things together as best they can and could potentially help give this team a little bit of edge over the Stars and maybe try to will this team to the postseason?
I'll let Tony say Chandler Stevenson first. Go ahead.
I'm going to say Chandler Stevenson, valuable player on this team. He was at the midseason point. He is now. He's today. He's just the Mr. Consistency for the Golden Knights. And again, Jack Eichel. Oh, Jack Eichel, we have to talk about him. Now scoreless in his last 4 games. But Eichel, when you watch him live in Emerson, he is by for the Golden Knights the best skater, the better on the ice. And Chris and I have been going back and forth and just a lot on our podcast about the fact that no one can match up with Jack Eichel. On this Golden Knights team, there's no one that could skate as fast as him. He throws passes repeatedly in front of the net. No one's diving down. It always rolls off their stick. Always have issues. He is by the best player with this team. And then, Chris and I were going to address this today. And Chris, I also had some feeding out about yesterday's, because we talked a little bit about the mannerisms of Jack Eichel. Not seem like a team guy. He's not communicating out there. I watch him really closely. He's not talking to the other players. He'll take a look screen and review plays and everything else on his little tablet. And, he doesn't really talk to the other players' team. I just think he's in a silo right now, and they have to fix that, But I would have to say Chandler Stevenson's probably number 1, and 1A is Eichel. Obviously, Eichel's just the best player. And God forbid, once he gets started, if he gets superstar, and he's come back all the way from those. And he's just a remarkable player, to be quite honest with you. And then, you still have the captain, Mark Stone, who missed an empty net in the game that could have salted it away against San Jose. And VGK also failed on the power play. Could you imagine? In OT, they had advantage. They did nothing with it. They stink on the power play. But Chris could be stepping up at this point.
Marchessault has had a very solid year. He's been our not so silent leader, could easily wear the captain when Mark Stone isn't around. Marchessault is someone who has stepped up at times. He's scored big goals for the team. He is that locker room guy that will step up and say something. I think he's taken Marc-Andre Fleury's Joker role, if you will, class clown sort of thing. He's going to be the first one to rough you up in practice a little bit and buzz a puck by you and just be the one to try and keep things loose. Big fan of Alec Martinez, even though he missed so much of the season with that just terrible injury. But Alec Martinez is a great guy to have out there at any given point. Theodore is finally, coming around and showing his colors and what he's capable of right now. But I'm stuck on Marchessault, if that's the bright spot for me, and Logan Thompson too. I mean, without Logan Thompson and what he has done over the last month or so now, we're not even probably having this discussion about this game because it's not a big game for us at this point.
One other addition, though, we were talking about maybe selfishness on the part of Eichel being in his own silo and all that. But when Logan Thompson lost to the San Jose Sharks, he was devastated, face down on the ice. The first person to come over to lift him up was Jack Eichel.
We have a visitor. This is Christopher, everybody. He listens to our podcast every day, Tony.
Gotta love the loyal listeners out there. Always a pleasure to have them stop by. We'll continue to talk about this matchup and some of the key players. Certainly a lot of key guys named by you guys just now for the VGK. And we'll talk about the star side of things after we say a quick thank you to one of the sponsors of today's episode. And that is, of course, Hellofresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm, fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and some seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Pick your favorites from 50 different weekly options and skip weeks when you need to. Change your delivery date or update your preferences, all in the HelloFresh app. HelloFresh has fit and wholesome recipes for satisfying and nutritious meals that you can feel good about, with 6 recipes per week to choose from, including low-calorie and carb-conscious options. Go to HelloFresh.com/LockedOn16 and use the code LockedOn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Well, we're jumping back into today's crossover episode between Locked On Stars and Locked On Vegas Golden Knights, and we're flipping the script here in the second half of the show, opening up the floor to Tony and Chris to ask me some Stars questions going into this huge matchup with a lot of playoff implications. So fire away, Chris and Tony.
Tony, let me fire one right now. This isn't necessarily related to tonight's game, but this is an article I wrote about this a while back, but I found this in 2019. Matthew DeFranks wrote this for the Dallas Morning News, and it was talking about Ryan Reeves. I find this very interesting. Ryan Reeves just had a big game. He knocked Cogliano out of the game. At the time, Matthias Janmark was a member of the Stars, and he ran Janmark pretty good. So Roman Polak, this is his quote: "Before the game, I talked to the guys. Just be aware when he's out there and talk. He's good at what he does." And then furthermore, he told Heiskanen before the game, if he's going to dump it in your corner, just let him go there. It's not worth it to get hit by Reeves. And then Ben Bishop added he's a huge body out there, middle linebacker on skates, all that stuff. So I guess my first question is, what is the perception of not necessarily just Ryan Reeves, but physical players like that in Dallas?
Yeah, that's a great question, and certainly one that I'm excited to answer and talk about a little bit. It's a unique question that I feel like I haven't got to cover a whole lot on this show, and it kind of depends on what angle you go at as far as when you ask about that feeling for Dallas, because I think for the fans, at least in my experience, and even being a Dallas Stars fan myself before hosting this podcast, I think that we can be so short-minded when it comes to remembering, players that we really don't like, unless it's someone that really rubs us the wrong way. That's sports in general. I mean, not just hockey, not just for the Dallas Stars. So I feel like with the guy like Reeves, I feel like, once he comes back into the building or his name gets said on the, over the speaker system, everyone's like, oh yeah, it's Ryan Reeves. And, he's done X, Y, and Z and so I feel like as far as fans, there's probably a little bit of, maybe I don't hatred seems like maybe too strong a word, but some disregard, I guess, for him. And I'm sure for the players, as far as whether it's Reeves or any other physical player out there, I think just with the style of hockey that the Stars typically play, which is pretty defensive minded and can be pretty physical, they probably aren't like necessarily like happy about it, but I don't think that they're too intimidated by it. And especially, a team led by a guy like Jamie Benn, a guy who's never afraid of a fight, always, down to drop
you don't want
gloves
him in
with
the
anybody.
box though either.
You don't. But I mean, Jamie's a guy that's not afraid to drop the gloves. But I mean, we have Roddick Fox is a big physical guy who's been on the checking line all season for the Stars. Yanni Hakanpää is like 6'7", 6'8", and he got added to the roster this season. So there's a lot of big physical guys that that don't back down from too much physical pressure. And so that's just how Dallas Stars hockey's been really for a while now, but especially ever since Jamie Benn kind of took over as captain, and we've had this era of Tyler Sagan and even Alexander Radulov, John Klingberg, those guys that have been mainstays for a little bit. And, I think that's starting to carry over a little bit, even into the younger generation as well on this team.
Interesting.
So let's talk about goaltending, for the Dallas. Because at the start of the season, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was Braden Holtby, it was Tan Hudobin, Jake Ottinger, I think, was still in the minors, right? Ben Bishop, yes. I know when we spoke earlier in the season, we talked about him, an injury. Scott Wedgwood was still back, yes, at the start of this. How have things shaken out now with the goaltending situation? And will we see Jake Ottinger? Is that the call for the game on Tuesday night?
Yeah, that's a great question. And my listeners know that I'm historically bad at predicting who's going to start in net for the Stars. So and it's really a toss-up. I think, it could easily be Jake Ottinger, but I think Scott Wedgwood has done a lot. That's true. So I guess it's pretty easy for you guys.
Easy for us now.
Easy for you guys the rest of the way. But for the Stars, it's been a wild season in the crease for this team since training camp. Like you said, Holtby and Hudobin were the guys at the start of the year, and we thought that Ben Bishop was going to come back and maybe be a former version of himself, but it just wasn't meant to be. And unfortunately, a lot of injuries had stockpiled and ended his career early. But yeah, Jake Ottinger has kind of taken the reins of this team and proven to be a really good goalie who is probably still not even at his peak yet. I mean, he's 22 years old and, still kind of figuring things out. But Scott Wedgwood has really come in and, given a little bit of a spark to this team. I think everyone thought that he was going to be good because he had pretty decent numbers playing on a Coyotes team that has just been really bad all year, especially defensively. So it was like, okay, but what can he do with a team like the Stars who have a better defense and, an inconsistent offense, but an offense that at times can put up some pretty big numbers, in some pretty big spots. So, but he's really come in and been a breath of fresh air for this team. And there's some people that would say that he's probably the number one guy on the roster, and Ottinger might be the two, but it just fluctuates. I mean, Ottinger's still playing well, but Wedgwood almost seems to have, more saves in him, and he tends to get more shots on goal thrown his way. I think I'm trying to remember now who he played, but someone put 50 shots on goal on the Stars the other night with Wedgwood in net, and I think it might have been Edmonton. It was somewhere on our last road trip of the season up in Western Canada. So he's done well, and I don't really know who it's going to be. I would guess it would be Wedgwood. Ottinger started on Saturday against the Kraken and did pretty well, all things considered, and got the win. But I mean, both guys are going to be fresh, and I'm pretty confident in whoever they put in net. And I think the fans are, I think the players are, and the coaching staff will be as well, because both guys have proven to be efficient goaltenders down the stretch this season.
Top lines accounted for what? 43 the scoring with Rupe Hintz and Robertson and Pavelski, right? 43% scoring.
I believe so, and if it's not that exact number, it's very close. I mean, without this top line, this team is at the bottom of the NHL. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, there's been glimpses of secondary scoring, but yeah, this top line is the heart and soul of this team. And those three names that you just said, I mean, it's crazy what we've seen. I mean, Joe Pavelski is, I think, 1 point away from tying his career high, and he's 37 years old. And many would think, that's the twilight of your career, but he's leading the team in points. 27 goals on the season, and Jason Robertson is 2 goals shy of being a 40-goal scorer, and the only other 3 Stars to have done that for the whole organization are Modano, Sagan, and Benn. So that's a pretty prestigious list as far as Dallas Stars lore goes. And then Rupe Hintz is had his best season by far. I mean, he's been a good player for this team in his early goings of his career, but this has been, his breakout season, I think, for the rest of the NHL. I think Stars fans knew how good he was. Maybe some teams in the Central Division that he had burned a few times knew the potential he had, but, a 70-point guy. He's also 3 goals shy of 40 goals. So not too unrealistic to believe that Jason Robertson and Rope Hintz could be 40-goal guys by the end of the season. And I expect them to play a big role in Tuesday night's game, as well as Joe Pavelski.
So let me give you 2 quick ones. One, if the Golden Knights are able to shut down the top line, who are the players that will factor besides the goaltending in the decision of the game? And the second question, not necessarily about tomorrow's game, but an outsider's perspective. Why does the hockey world outside of Southern Nevada hate the Golden Knights?
Yeah, I guess I can answer. I'll go ahead and answer the first question first. I'll just go in order and kind of think through the second one as I answer the first one. But yeah, as far as the secondary options, if the top line is shut down, it's a question that's had a varying answer throughout the season. I mean, Tyler Sagan has kind of found a little bit of new life in the second half of the season. He had a little bit of a rough start to the year. He was coming off surgery, off-season surgery, and that pretty much injuries that he had sustained even back in the Cup run in 2020 for the Stars, and he's now in his early 30s. And Jamie Benn, I believe 5th on the team in points right now, has done a little bit better in the second half of the season, but still not quite putting up the numbers we've wanted to see for him this season. But the big X factor, I think, in this game for the Stars, besides that top line, will be the play from the defenseman on the offensive side of the ice. That's also been lacking this year. John Klingberg has found a little bit of new life here in the last month or so, contributing a lot more really ever since the trade deadline. And then Miro Heiskanen was kind of having a down year as well, and then got mononucleosis and was knocked out for a while, but he's back. And on the defensive side, he's cracked up to be this season. But offensively, he's been a little bit lacking, only 4 goals, only 30 assists. So it's going to really come down to those guys, as well as the kind of the secondary defenseman, Ryan Suter, who's getting up there in age, but is going to be a Dallas Star for at least the next 4 seasons. And Esa Lindell, Yanni Hakanpää, who I mentioned, still a young guy but new to this roster, but he's been a pretty key player for this Stars team. He's played, I think, just about every game this season, and been a guy that doesn't get a lot of goals or assists, but just a big body that can check pretty much anyone on the ice. And so that's really going to be the X factor there. And then to answer the second question, really the thing that comes to my mind, and I feel like on my end, I mean, I can't speak for all Stars fans or all NHL fans, but I haven't really ever held too much animosity outside of, the Western Conference Finals. I don't even think it was rooted out of hatred. It was just, hey, we want to win this series and go to the Stanley Cup,
No, that was a fair series. It wasn't terribly physical. It was a good series. I mean, good job, Stars. There was nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, and as far as I know, I don't think there's a whole lot of bad blood between these teams. I know anytime I talk to one of the Locked On hosts of a Pacific team, they're like, "Oh, we want to see the Vegas Golden Knights, fall." And I know the guys over at Locked On Sharks were just having the time of they're always having a good time, but I know those guys were eating it up last time.
No, great rivalry.
Yeah.
I with everyone between all of us.
Right. That's at least on our end, I know it's friendly. And so it's probably just one of those things where it's like you guys were new to the NHL and had, one of the best starts you can have as an expansion team. I mean, you went to the Cup final and won a game or 2 against the Capitals, and you stole a game from the Caps, and I mean that's just about as good of a start as you can have. I think if the Kraken had done the same thing, I think that they'd be in a pretty similar situation, but they're about on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as expansion teams go. So I think that factors in a little bit as well. I mean, you have the new kid on the block who, and I don't think VGK's missed a postseason either. I mean, if they missed this year, I think it's the first time since the franchise has started that you'd miss out on the postseason. So there's probably a handful of teams that haven't been to the postseason since the Golden Knights have existed, and it's, I guess, a little bit unfair in their eyes. But that's my answer on there, and I'm sure if you ask any hockey fan, you get a varying answer.
Of course, that was pretty PG.
Yeah. Of course, we like to keep things PG here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But we'll continue to talk about this game and all the implications and playoff importance of this matchup after another quick break, and after we say thank you to Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. They have everything that you could possibly need for your car or truck, including brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. And we're closing out today's crossover episode between Locked On Stars and Locked On Vegas Golden Knights. And I mean, we've said it all show. And I mean, if you've been listening to the show and you're a Stars fan or a Golden Knights fan, or even just a general NHL fan who's interested in the playoff race, you know how big the implications are tonight. If the Stars get a regulation win, they are all but in the playoffs. And that means the Golden Knights are out. But if the Golden Knights win, their hopes for the postseason are very much alive, and the look for the Stars looks a little bit bleaker. Tony and Chris, how do you guys see this one shaping out as far as the Vegas Golden Knights go? Do you think they have it in them to rally and get this win in Dallas?
Me personally, I still think this team is way down. Thought that the loss to San Jose was devastating. And the fourth line played very well. William Gay came back and added some life along with Wah and Colasar. Colasar knocked out of that game period on Sunday night. So we don't know if he'll be back percent healthy if he does return. The fourth line, and that's the luxuries now of being healthy, or has been for VGK, is rolling. We'll see how things shake out there. But to me, I just think this team mentally, they just seem not to be their biggest issues with Pete DeBoer this entire season. Chris and I have talked about this repeatedly, is that for some reason they don't get motivated, and they also play to the same level as their opponent. So they'll lose to some of the really bad teams, some of the poor teams. Lost twice to Philadelphia this season. Philadelphia came off that 10-game losing streak, and they lost here at home. And so I just don't think they have it. I don't think that they're together. I don't think that there's enough chemistry on this team. And if Dallas doesn't get them, I am so afraid and concerned about the game the following night. It's a back-to-back in Chicago, and you have one goalie now. Jari Patera's been down in the AHL, and he's not, Chris, you can attest, he's not even the best goalie that they have down there. And if they need to turn to him, what happens there? I just don't think that they are in the right mental state now. And as Mark Stone said the other night, that it was not a distraction with everything going on with him. It's a major distraction. It's an absolute major distraction with this team, and they're just going to be gassed. They might run out of gas in this game, and I'm going to take Dallas 4-3.
No, everything is fair that you said, Tony. Local sports books have us around minus 800 to miss the playoffs. So you have to wait. If you want to win $100 on that bet, you have to lay $800. So the books don't have a whole lot of faith, number one, in the Golden Knights making the playoffs. But I mean, I was interacting with the Golden Knights fan in one of the infamous Facebook groups out here. And if the Golden Knights do win in Dallas in regulation, then Dallas has to lose one of their two remaining home games. Arizona and Anaheim are their final two opponents. Seems crazy they would lose to one of those teams at home, doesn't it? It seems absolutely crazy. Like as crazy as the Flyers coming in and kicking our butts at home ice after a 10-game losing streak. As crazy as the Devils coming in and beating us on home ice. As crazy as last night with what happened with the Sharks. So sports are fun. They're crazy. They're so unpredictable. And I mentioned this last night. This is fun right now. It's unfortunate that we're in this spot, but it's fun. It's entertaining. It's exciting. This is the craziest of our 5 seasons that the Golden Knights have ever had. And that includes when we went to the Stanley Cup final in season 2 with not a major and everything. So yes, we can still make the playoffs. The odds are long. Minus 800 not to make the playoffs is a fair number in my opinion. But each team's got to play 3 more games still, one against each other. It's not out of the realm of possibility yet, but it's close.
Yeah, this season's been chaotic, and the Stars also, on the night one of a back-to-back in this Tuesday matchup, like you said, Arizona and Anaheim, a little bit different than having to travel to Chicago, and then St. Louis for the VGK on Friday. Always a tough matchup to win against the Blues when they're on home ice, but yeah, going to be really interesting to see how it shapes out. And yeah, I mean, like you said, sports are unpredictable, and it's crazy. I mean, you would think that the Stars win at least one of, if not both those games against the Coyotes and Ducks, but the Stars lost on home ice to Montreal. They lost both games to Ottawa this season. They've lost to Arizona. It was a road game, but still, back when Scott Wedgwood was still there, and he made the Stars look silly. So it's not out of the realm of the possibility for the Stars to choke away this opportunity. They also tend to play down to their competition, even beating some of the bad teams. They played way too close. And I know you guys also suffered from this as well, but we lost to New Jersey at home. I think we could have leapfrogged Nashville and actually distanced ourselves a little bit more in the playoff race and squandered that opportunity. So I know we can all three relate on that pain, I guess, of losing to New Jersey at home. But yeah, it's going to be quite a ride, and I expect this game to be, very reminiscent of a playoff game. I guess we'll get the atmosphere at the American Airlines Center that we probably would have gotten had we been able to have crowds back in 2020 for the Western Conference Finals. I imagine it'll be a sellout, a lot of craziness and shenanigans in the stands, but probably some physicality on the ice. And I mean, we said that not really a rivalry between these teams now, but this is kind of one of those games that can maybe produce something, whether it's an injury, which I hope no one gets injured on either side. I mean, just injuries are the worst in sports, but a hit or a fight. I mean, this is kind of the setting for maybe some beef to be born, if you will. So I'm excited to see what this game has. And yeah, I of course think the Stars can win, but I know Vegas has had Dallas's number this season in 2 pretty close games, and that first one early back in the season in Dallas, the Stars blew a little bit of a lead. So going to be, time will only tell, and this is a hard game to predict, but I think it'll be exciting from the first puck drop all the way to the end of regulation and even potentially overtime. I know that even an overtime loss, I think, still keeps the Stars out of the playoffs as far as point differential goes.
Yeah, and just one final thing here. I think that towards the end, Dallas, you're going to have 2 teams just going to throw games because they hate VGK so much. With Arizona and with Anaheim, they're just going to throw the games. Let's face it, they're just going to throw the games. I'm just telling you right now, straight up.
Tony, come on. It could be a dumpster fire tomorrow night. It could be something crazy like pardon me. It could be something crazy like a 6-5 game. Just each team has maybe a 3-goal lead at some points. If I got to make a prediction, 6-5 Vegas, just because I feel like if I said anything otherwise, it wouldn't be good. And hopefully maybe like the fourth line, William Carrier and Nick Waugh kind of carry things. What do you think it's going to be? What do you think over there in Dallas? What's your prediction for the score?
Yeah, I think I'll go 5-3 Stars, and I think they get that fifth on an empty netter. Most likely, I don't think that they're going to win by more than 1 goal if they do.
We can't hit empty netter, so that's pretty fair.
We sometimes can't either. So if we do get one, it'll probably be after 3 or 4 icing calls, and it'll be some bottom line defenseman who scores it from the back corner off a face-off win. So that's kind of been the way that the Stars have rolled late in games, but I'm excited to see how it folds out, and I'm glad that we got to do this crossover. Thank you guys for hopping on and talking hockey with me.
It was a good time. I liked it.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's crossover episode. I know I enjoy collaborating with these other hosts here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Always a good time. So much insight and knowledge about these other teams. It really helps inform me before these matchups, and I hope it does the same for you guys as well. A lot on the line tonight. Going to be a very exciting game, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out and getting to talk about it on tomorrow's episode, so you won't want to miss out on that. But thank you guys for stopping by today's episode of Locked On Stars. Remember to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or follow us on your favorite podcasting platform and leave a rating or review if you like what you hear. You can also find and follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis. And you can also find our show on Twitter and follow us there at Locked On Stars. Again, be sure to tune in tomorrow for a full reaction and recap and breakdown of this game. And if the Stars get a regulation win, maybe a little bit of celebration. It'll be a pretty good time if the Stars can get a win in this one and we secure that spot in the playoffs. But we'll see you there, Stars fans. If you're going to the game, have fun, be safe, and have a good time. And we will see you back here tomorrow.